we're back. We are United by Rice, where we talk about all things APINH, anything from entertainment, TV, film, theater, authors, and beyond. I am one of your co-hosts, Junko Goda, and I'm here
And
with...
I'm Ben. Yeah, and I'm Ben Lee, your other co-host. So good to see you, Junko.
Good to see you. My voice is off, if no one can tell. I bet everyone can tell. Yeah,
Oh,
I
yeah.
had
Sorry.
some actor work, and my voice is slightly still recovering. So just doing some voice rest, but I will lend you my voice for a little bit today.
Well, thank you for that. And I think that's okay on this first recording here because we will do a shorter intro because we're actually going to introduce the rest of our episode pretty soon, which I had the really, I'll call it a luxury of doing a very special podcast, something that we haven't done before, which is go on site and meet with
Yeah.
one of our guests. So I met recently and interviewed Kathy Fang, who in the Bay Area and in San Francisco is somewhat of a well-known figure. I'm wearing the House of
Oh, right.
Nanking
Right.
hoodie because of the restaurant House of Nanking, which anybody my age probably or younger. I think the restaurant opened up basically in the 80s. It sits right on the edge of North Beach and Chinatown. So it's got a really prominent, highly trafficked
Right.
spot for both like locals who are looking for just really good Chinese food, but then also tourists. And so what Kathy has done recently is she's basically documented the history of the restaurant through their new cookbook called House of Nanking. And it really
Nice.
captures a lot of the family recipes. So essentially she, and we'll go in this in the interview, we'll go into this in the interview, but she talks about really the origins of the restaurant.
Now,
It's a
Ben,
family business.
are these recipes something like you can do? Like, have you leafed through the book? Like...
Great question. And it's actually something I asked her. So, you know, her father and her put this cookbook together, and it only happened because of her time. They did a little docuseries on Food TV about the restaurant. And so that convinced, I think, her father to finally say, okay, yeah, let's actually do a cookbook.
Oh,
All
okay.
that said, typical Chinese people, I think, and restaurants, they don't have recipes written down, right?
Right.
They're not following a recipe, and as we probably know, like your typical French Laundry measuring to, the pinch of every ingredient.
Right.
Not to say that they aren't doing precision cooking because the food is fantastic, but she did have to, spend about a year kind of building the recipes, and she 100% used the lens of something that you could cook yourself, or someone like
Okay.
me could cook yourself. So
Yeah.
so look, if you thumb through the cookbook, and I you can find this on Amazon, you can find it on any bookseller, you'll probably see that range of, there's probably a few that, yeah, I don't know that I'm going to do that. That requires too
Right.
much.
Like
But
crab, or like
yeah, but
something on
like
the luxurious end, maybe.
Yeah, but like 80% of it are recipes that, probably about 10-minute prep, 20 minutes of cooking. You need a wok, you need, 3 or 4 basic ingredients,
Mm.
and a lot of really good comfort food. And that's kind of what the restaurant is, right? They're not, while the food is colorful and looks really good and is plated beautifully, they're not aiming to be this like fancy Chinese restaurant, right? They're aiming to make essentially good home food. So in that way, it's kind of naturally attainable. So
Cool.
anyway, it was really lovely to meet her, lovely to do the episode there. Mike Fung, who someone we don't talk about on the
Yeah.
show very often, one of our partners, actually flew up from LA to film it all. So we got some great both interview clips but behind the scenes clips,
Nice.
and she fed me her eggplant, her this kind of fish stew or soup that they're really well known for, and their sesame chicken. And then what you
Nice.
don't see, because this all happens off camera, is I take like a couple bites of food during the podcast,
Right.
but then actually she packed that all for me to take home, and then we basically had another lunch with
Yeah,
her downstairs where she fed both Mike and I with
yeah.
a bunch of other things. So it was a great
Nice.
day.
Cool.
Um, so we won't talk too long here because it's a pretty
Yeah.
long episode otherwise. But Junko, I'll maybe just ask you, like, I don't think we've ever talked about your or mine's cooking skills. Do you cook much? Is that something that you
Yeah.
enjoy doing?
Honestly, with COVID kinda suppressed my, like, motivations for
Mm.
cooking lately, but, it's getting back there. It's getting back. I'm a true believer in the Instant Pot, and we're getting into the stew and, stew and curry season, so I am looking forward to bringing out my Instant Pot.
Okay. And then, when we talk about Chinese food, oftentimes we break it down all the way to like Sichuan, Cantonese. Actually, one of the funny things about House of Nanking is the food's not actually from Nanking. It's, more Cantonese and Sichuan influenced. In Japanese food, is there that similar type of regional breakdown
Oh gosh, yeah.
by foods?
Well, not
And
foods, but it's more taste. So on the like northern Tokyo will tend to be on the sweeter side, and then you go down like Osaka tends to be more like subtle, and Kyoto cuisine tends to be more subtle um flavor. So even how the shoyu preference from region is completely different. And shoyu is like the backbone of
mm,
cuisine. So that really, really really means you're getting a really diverse kind of palette, yeah, in Japan.
and do you lean toward any specific, like in terms of personal preference,
Oh, I guess, yeah,
like a
yeah, like the
regional?
Kyoto, yeah, like Kyoto, like more Osaka style,
Mm,
so more on, like, the subtle, like, like, if there's yakitori, I'm gonna prefer something where it's, cooked and basted, whereas, as opposed to, like, finished with a sauce, I'd rather not have the sauce and just have it, like, cook into the
mm,
meat. Yeah, I don't know if that makes sense,
okay.
but yeah,
Okay. Yeah. I get it. I think I get it.
yeah.
Um, well, well, with that, I think we can move
Yeah, I'm
move
excited
forward and
to
listen
yeah.
to the interview. For those listening, this is one that you actually want to have your video on because the food looks delicious. The restaurant looks we eat in a tea room that's upstairs in the house, and actually in Fang, which is the sister restaurant that she opened up near House of Nanking. Um, Again, Chef Kathy Fang is her Instagram. House of Nanking SF is the restaurant's Instagram. And then, of course, we are United by Rice podcast on Instagram. And you can find us on Spotify, on iHeartRadio, on YouTube. And so YouTube might be the best channel to watch this one on. And I guarantee you it will make you hungry. So
Yeah.
thank you for listening. And here is my interview with Kathy. Welcome to United by Rice. I'm very excited. I've been looking forward to this day to meet Kathy Fang in person and come to her restaurant, Fang, to celebrate the launch of her new cookbook, House of Nanking, which we're going to talk a lot about. Yeah. But in a podcast that I've never gotten to do before, I get to eat, which I'm even more excited about.
It's the best part.
Yeah, of course. Well, talking to you is also a great part. So, I've been going to House of Nanking since at least college days, probably actually earlier. I was born in the Bay Area, grew up in actually San Francisco, was born in Chinatown.
Oh, me too.
Yeah, were you Chinese hospital?
Yes. Oh my God. Same hospital.
I don't want to age you, but I was born in like what my mom would call the haunted wing, like the old Chinese hospital, whereas now there's like the newer hospital.
I was also in the older one.
Yeah.
But I didn't get the story about the haunted wing. I've got to ask you about that later.
I'll tell you later. My mom actually was a nurse there her whole career after
really?
they moved from Hong Kong.
Oh.
So at least 30 years. And I used to hang around. It's quite possible I saw you as a baby because back in the day, I guess, it was Chinatown, Chinese hospital. They didn't care as much that, here's a little kid running around the hospital. Yeah. And the, what do you call it, the nursery was right by the area where my mom worked, and I used to always just stare at the babies. So.
Oh my gosh, you probably saw me there then.
Yeah. Anyway, fun background. So you grew up here. Obviously, I used to go to this restaurant all the time. When did your parents come? And what sparked the idea to open up a restaurant, pick the location where it is on Kearney, even the style of food and the name, just all the background I'd love to hear.
Yeah, wow, okay, that's gonna be a lot. So my parents immigrated to San Francisco in the early 80s.
Okay.
And initially, they were not actually thinking of opening a restaurant. They've never actually worked in a restaurant prior to moving to San Francisco. They were pretty well educated. They thought that they would maybe come here and go to school and try to do something that they found to be more prestigious. You know, maybe go into real estate or do something in finance. But when they landed into San Francisco, they realized that with no money, the first thing they had to do was try to get a job. Sure. And just to even make ends meet.
And they're probably around 30s based on the timeline that you're going through? Okay,
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And I think they immediately kind of just caught on with, you know, like some of their siblings decided to go the education route. But for them, they really felt like they had to start working. And I think that thought was also to say, well, we're all supporting each other here. Not all of us sibling-wise can go to school. Maybe it's kind of a pick or choose, and my dad chose to be the one to work. Okay. Then his older sister chose to go to school. Same thing with my mom. The younger brother chose to go to school, and she's like, well, I'm going to work to kind of just help out. And I think because the easiest job to get into at that time were restaurants. You don't need to speak English fluently. It's very simple things that you could say you would do at home, right? Could start out as washing dishes, bussing tables. They could speak the language. And then they slowly moved into sort of like becoming a server. And one day my dad had an opportunity to go work in the kitchen because the chef didn't make it that day. So I think it was just those experiences combined together, and also seeing in their term, like these owners of restaurants they found to be successful. And to them, successful meant, well, they have a car. Sure. They were able to buy a house, and their kids are going to private school. Sure. So that's what they were aiming for.
That's right? The American dream, I think. Yeah. The immigrant American dream. Sure.
So they said, hey, you know, like if they can do this from just owning a Chinese restaurant, maybe we can do that, right? We've been working in restaurants since we've been here. We kind of have an idea of how this works. And so that's actually how they ended up opening House of Nanking, is because my mom said, you know, let's save up money from all these jobs. Back when they would do like 3 jobs a day, save all of that and open a place. And for location, my mom's dad is very, very into feng shui, right? Who's always reading books about feng shui. And so my mom said, hey, you know, we should consult with my dad. And at the time, my dad's parents were not there. They were still in China. And you always actually listen to your elders, right? And so the elder was my mom's dad. And he went around and picked the Kearney location. Okay. And my dad at the time actually said, I don't think this is a very good location because this is right on the edge of Chinatown.
Correct.
It's not actually in the center. At that time, there weren't a ton of popular restaurants on that street. Sure. The place next to us was like a pinball like shop. You know, it was like not that great. Yeah. And so, but he didn't want to argue. And so my grandfather said, listen to me, this is going to be the best spot for you guys. And lo and behold, I do believe, and my parents say so now, like location is everything. And feng shui is something we do as a whole family believe in. And now I feel like that street, when you reflect back on everything, is actually a very, very important street because it is the border of both North Beach, downtown, and Chinatown. So it's like this really interesting intersection. And so many people actually drive down Kearney Street. And so it's highly visible, more visible than some of the restaurants that are hidden in sort of the, what we call the busy streets, right, where like the little shops and stores are. But because of that, I think like we actually we're able to utilize that into our favor.
Sure.
And yeah, that's how we ended up getting that location.
I mean, it is an amazing location. Anytime I tell people who are coming from out of town, like they ask me, "Oh, recommend some restaurants," I'm always like, "R&G Lounge, House of Nanking."
Mm-hmm. See, they're on that street too.
Yeah, and it's such a great location because, again, when I was going in the 90s, it was because I was going out, what college kids do. Oftentimes that might include, North Beach, a bar at North Beach or whatnot, and then we would come into the restaurant late at night, and probably your dad served us.
Yeah.
And I remember never even ordering, just like,
that's the thing to do.
feed us, whatever you think is great, or whatever you're cooking today. Such a good memory, but, you gave a lot of interesting cultural reasons, like Feng Shui.
Yes.
My pronunciation's terrible, but I think it's just like a perfect location, right? In terms of, to your point, not deep into Chinatown where it's hard to park, not deep into North Beach where it's hard to park, but right there where everybody goes by. Also the branding, like as much as this cookbook has like beautiful colors and whatnot, the sign is what I remember from when I was young.
Yes.
Was that, how intentional do you think that was, or was that also just pure luck? Because it's a very visible restaurant, like you said.
So I would say that it was intentional for my dad to create signage that had that multicolor. Although you'll read in the book that was not actually our logo. What we think of now is, House of Nanking logo was genius. He had a different logo at the time. His logo, which was on the business card, was actually a duck. That he drew from one of my Scholastic book orders. So as a kid, I would sit on the counter, I'd bring home, as in the restaurant, the Scholastic book orders, and I'd go through it, and my dad would always see these images on there. And so he actually pulled influence from like a duck image there, drew it onto the card holding a sign that said House of Nanking. And that thing was gold. And he thought in his head, well, people associate duck with Chinese food. And then he also thought, and gold, it looked very elegant and clean and minimalistic.
Chinese people love gold.
So he thought that's the logo. But then when it came to the signage, he thought totally different, which was the right way to go. He said, I'm going to make it multicolored because people drive down the street. And the person who made the signage, my dad said, wouldn't do it at first. Because he was the go-to guy for all of Chinatown. And he tried to convince my dad, don't do that, nobody does that. Like, it's not very Chinese. You should do gold or red. Why not like very typical Asian prosperous colors? And my dad said, just do what I tell you to do as far as the color goes, and let me worry about it, right? If it's wrong, then it's on me. So they made the sign. And you're right, like that became such an iconic sign with the colors, like everybody can remember it. I think if we actually went with the one that was on the business card, people wouldn't. In fact, the business card slowly got faded out, and then we took that signage and it became the House of Nanking logo and card.
It's funny, we were literally just at Starbucks, my producer Mike and I, and they had, I think, a pride flag, but it had like a black background to it. And Mike was actually asking me, do those colors in San Francisco mean? And I said, I don't know. I think it's just coincidence. So it's almost like you had all these kind of things that weren't planned for just work out in your favor, because obviously pride is such a big San Francisco thing. And I think sometimes people look at my hoodie, it's like, is that related to the pride? I'm like, Chinese restaurant. But it's very San Francisco at the end of the day. Now, growing up, and if I just think about the food that's at House of Nanking, it is also very unique. I think the way it's plated, the way it looks, it's not always all traditional. How much was that shaped by the fact that in probably the early years you did get a wider range of customers, or your dad and mom got a wider range of customers, because they weren't all the Chinatown Chinese, right? But you probably got a good amount of tourist business or North Beach business.
I think in the beginning, my dad actually, I know, in the very beginning, my dad went very traditional because that is what he knew, right? He wanted to make food that he knew back from Shanghai. And plating, all of those things were a little bit more traditional. But for that time frame, people who could enjoy that was very minimal. Right? You could count on your hand how many people are from Shanghai at that point. And my dad knew all of them, right? And so only they could appreciate that food. And he realized that, well, you know, all these other places, right, like Henry Hunan's, these places that do well, they're not only servicing Chinese people, they're servicing people such as Americans, Westerners, people from all over. So he knew he had to widen that and make that gap wider so that people can come and be able to enjoy Chinese food in a more accessible manner. So that's when he started to kind of change his food a little bit. He still used Shanghainese cuisine as the basis because that's what he's familiar with, but he started to incorporate California local ingredients. I would say that my dad was very forward thinking in that he was already doing what people are still doing now, right? Taking Chinese food and saying, well, let's like put a twist on it, let's put California influence, and he was doing that. You know, if you look at the dish, any of our appetizers back in the day was served with peanut sauce. And peanut sauce is not typical in Chinese cuisine. You'll find it in, say, Thai food. And peanut butter was not even something my dad had ever had when he was in Shanghai. It was always sesame paste to make a sesame sauce. He came here and he tried Skippy or Jif or Skippy, and he was like, oh my God. He's like, this
good stuff.
Is so good, right? He was blown away. He's like, it's sweet, it's creamy. And he thought, you know what, let's actually swap out the sesame paste and let's use peanut butter, because in his mind, this tastes wonderful and this is something that's more familiar. And so he created this like peanut sauce that everyone was like crazy about. I remember there was this fisherman guy, he would, you know, he wasn't like a fishmonger, he would just go fish and bring something to my dad and say, would you like to buy this, or I'll do a trade. And the trade would be, we would give him cartons of the peanut sauce. And he would take the rice, and people would just use that over rice. So he served it over dumplings, he served it over onion cakes, just anything that he felt would pair well with it, he served it. And so that's kind of that change, right? He started realizing, I can't make food the traditional way, I have to make it so that Americans can kind of be able to understand it and it's not too exotic to them.
Now, you talked about coming over from, as the first question I actually have, you've mentioned Shanghai several times and Shanghainese food. The restaurant's called House of Nanking.
Yes. That's also a really funny story. And this is all because my grandfather, my mom's dad. So when it came to naming the restaurant, my mom's dad said, we're going to name it House of Nanking. He was always very firm about like his direction. I'm curious how he came up with it too. And when I asked, my dad was like, oh, well, you know, your grandfather basically said, I've had really good experience in Nanking when I was in my teenage years. He's not from Nanking. And it used to be the capital of China. It's a beautiful city. We should name it House of Nanking. Like, no ties whatsoever. We don't even make Nanking food, which is very confusing, right? It's still confusing sometimes to people because we have mainland Chinese tourists who come in and they see, oh, this is rare.
Oh, I can't get this anywhere.
No, I can't get this anywhere. There's no restaurants that serve Nanking food, Nanjing food, and they'll come. It's like almost a ploy now. We're like, yes, come. They sit down after they wait in line. They start spewing out dishes that are like Nanjing dishes, and we're like, oh, we don't have that. We don't have that. And they're so confused. And we're like, yeah, but it's called Nanjing Xiaogan. It's called like Nanjing Eatery when you directly translate. And they're like, well, where are you from, boss? And my dad would be like, Shanghai. They're like, why isn't it called House of Shanghai?
I'm sure they don't leave disappointed though.
No. And I think all of that actually ties into making it quite memorable for people, right? You're almost going in with this one expectation. It makes for a funny story. In fact, we had people from all over, like even in Asia. I was in Vietnam a couple years back for my husband. There was like a conference, you know, tech specific. I was talking to this lady and she's like, oh, I've been to San Francisco a lot, and there's always this restaurant that I really like to go to. and they mentioned like House of Nanking and this fish soup, and I was like, what are the chances? I was like, wow, that's my family's restaurant.
Yeah.
And they always say it was so unique. They like went in for something and came out with something else, totally unexpected.
It's a very, I mean, I remember my college days experience. I think we would describe it. Seinfeld was big at the time, right?
Yeah.
It's almost like the soup Nazi. You go and you know you just take what the chef's going to give you and you eat it and you enjoy it, and you always do enjoy it. So, I'd love to get into you a little bit. Now, your dad, it doesn't sound like he was ever classically culinary trained.
Yeah.
He kind of self-taught in many ways, learned from the kitchens that he worked in his early days. What about you? What was your cooking journey like?
My cooking journey all started with being at House of Nanking. So I was 7 years old when my parents opened. I was, the taste tester. Any dish that my dad would create, I would be the first one to taste it. And, I think that's kind of that immigrant experiences. They don't trust to be able to do that with everybody, nor do they share struggles. Right?
Sure.
So it was my mom and myself, and he knew that I didn't know how to lie. As a kid, I would just tell him. But everything my dad made was always so good. I didn't have to. So that was my first culinary education. Was always watching my dad, and I was always intrigued with food, and I would break it down and explain what I liked about a dish, even at a young age, and why I thought this was good versus, a version of it had somewhere else. And after that, though, when I got a little older, I couldn't spend that amount of time in the restaurant. I had to do schoolwork. I had to go to bed at a reasonable time. Sure. And so my parents actually had siblings that took turns taking care of me. They would stay. They would live at our house for a year to two, and then they would swap. And another sibling would do the same thing. And this is just so that there was always somebody who could feed me, help me with laundry, all that stuff, make sure the household was like safe and taken care of with me in it. And that's when I started learning about like family cooking, right? I had a lot of House of Nanking cooking, and then family cooking I discovered was so broad and so different because my mom's side had a lot of Cantonese influence and some Hunan. My dad's side was more like Shanghainese. And I felt like my culinary education just continued throughout my entire youth up until graduating high school and going to college. But I was also classically trained, so I did go to the Cordon Bleu.
I see. Okay. Now, you opened Fang 18 years ago. What were your intentions in terms of now putting your own personality, your own signature into a restaurant that clearly is affiliated? Yeah, everyone still wears House of Nanking t-shirts. But talk about some of the different dishes, the different flavors that you have brought into Fang. And it's, just for folks that haven't been here yet, we're right in the, I guess you call this the business district, financial district. We're less than a block away from Moscone. You have a different clientele here probably too.
Yeah. So in opening Fang, we wanted it to be something that was a little different from House of Nanking. We didn't want the same thing, otherwise it would have been House of Nanking Part 2.
Nobody would have complained about it. Literally House of Nanking 2.
Yeah, people would be like, great.
Yes.
But my dad, he, for one, wanted to make sure that if people came here, they would still be able to make that connection and say, oh, this comes from, the Fang family. Flavors are very similar, but also we didn't want to compete with each other in that form of concept. So, the thing that would make it different is that now I'm in the picture.
Sure.
And I represent another generation, which means different ideas, different flavor profiles, even though my dad and I think very alike in terms of how to create dishes. His palate is slightly different, right? That's just normal. I started bringing in a lot more like Western ideas and flavor profiles of like, I like tart, I like kind of tangy, more spice, more herbs. I was introducing new ingredients for my dad because I had the time and the experience to go out and try more foods than my dad had. And I think that's sort of that special winning recipe for us, is that our menu and our food here is constantly kind of evolving. It's always grounded in traditional Chinese cuisine, but my dad and I are always working together to create flavors that are just a little different. Like, what can we do? My dad likes to pull more from new things that are happening in Chinese cuisine. And I like to pull things in that are not necessarily from Chinese cuisine. I like to pull in some Western influence, right? And then that works well in this neighborhood because this demographic is mostly, I would say, Westerners. You've got the convention center, you've got people traveling from all over the U.S. coming here. That base has to be even broader.
Yeah, you're in between the Gold Club
and
the W Hotel.
Yeah,
so probably a very eclectic
group of people coming in.
Yes. Let's talk about you and when you started to transition into a more public figure, almost a celebrity chef, and then of course culminating in the TV show Fang on the Food TV network. I'm curious how that even came about.
So I feel like growing up, my dad was already quite popular. Like, a lot of people knew him. Like, if we were on the street, people say, "Oh, Mr. Fang, I love your restaurant." Growing up, it didn't really register. I just figured, oh, well, if you have a restaurant, that's probably what happens. And we had lots of articles with my dad in it. It wasn't until I started Fang with my dad where I realized sort of that power of leaning into that, because my dad got all of that, but we never really utilized it, right? We didn't do anything with it. And I brought in kind of that business degree of like, well, how do we continue this on so that people will continue to talk about what we've created here? And also I realized the element of family at that time when I started was still pretty unique. Like, there's not a ton of Chinese restaurants where the family, the kids have continued on, because we grew up very traditional, right? They all wanted us to be doctors and lawyers. None of them, even my dad included, didn't want me to become a chef. He did all this so that I could go be a doctor. And none of that worked out for me. It just turns out I love doing what he's doing. So I kind of leaned into all of that and said, let's continue this sort of marketing angle. We didn't spend money on it necessarily, but I wanted to tell that story. The other part was, a lot of people started coming up to me and saying, wow, I'm really surprised that Peter has a daughter who can cook. Like, nobody knew that. People thought, oh, well, she's just riding on her dad's coattails and just maybe didn't make it in the finance industry because people knew I went in there, and now she's just living off of what they've created. And once they saw that I could cook, and I'm very comfortable with speaking with people, which sometimes a lot of chefs are not. And immigrants are not, generally. They said, have you ever thought about being on TV? And I said, no, but I wouldn't be opposed to it. That gave me an idea. I was like, well, what would I want to do? And I thought, I want to be the next Jada De Laurentiis. I want to teach people how to cook Chinese food, because all I see are American people on there, right? I'm not seeing our culture being represented, our food being represented. If anything, I see some people who are not Asian cooking Asian food. And I'm like, well, then they should get it from the source.
And by the way, I think that concept is spot on, right? Because when we see Asian chefs on TV, whether it's like a Top Chef or something, and no offense to any of those wonderful chefs, but they're not cooking the type of meal that I'd want to cook at home, right? Just like that comfort. This is close to what my mom would have cooked. Right? Maybe obviously better, but so I think the opportunity to do that is great, and through the cookbook and through the work that you're doing. And to your point, it's not just the food, but it's telling our stories. It's kind of telling our culture.
So that's what I wanted to do, and the way to do it, my husband said, was you have to hire a PR. You need people. If you're always at the restaurant, you can't sell yourself or advocate for yourself. So we hired PR. They started getting me on Food Network, cooking competitions. Anytime they're looking for an expert to talk about what other Asian food or anything. I started writing, created a blog just to put myself out there. And I think that is actually what ended up landing me the reality show.
Sure.
I didn't get a cooking show because, believe it or not, I still got a lot of people that would tell me Chinese food is too exotic for people to cook, especially middle America. Nobody wants to learn how to make Asian food. It's too intimidating. And which I thought was crazy because it's one of the most popular cuisines out there. Right? There's more Chinese restaurants than there are fast food, but they would never look at the statistics, like any of that. No, nobody wants to. They want to learn burgers, barbecue, all that. But I got something else that was even better, because now we were able to actually share the dynamic between my dad. So the reality docuseries is about my father and I, the restaurant, and that's actually what catapulted.
Yeah, what leads into this book, right? So you've made it known or noted in the book, and it's true, right? A lot of traditional Chinese restaurants and a lot of restaurants in general don't share the recipes. And your dad, I think, had always been opposed to that prior to this project. So what was the turning point? What allowed this to happen?
The turning point was actually the show. Okay. So when the show wrapped and my dad finally got to see it, at the very end, last episode, they got some old photos of my dad. They kind of recapped everything, sort of telling the story of, how did Peter and Lily create a restaurant like this? We talked about the frugality aspect, what my dad had to do in order to save money, and open a place like this, that he visually was kind of like, oh my God, this is really unique. I'm so glad we have some kind of record of what we've created.
Sure.
And as soon as I saw that, I immediately told my dad, I was like, well, what's the best way to do this? Because they only kind of delved into it for very little.
Sure.
We should do our book. We should do the cookbook that I've been wanting to do. And my dad said, okay, but I don't have the time, right? He wouldn't know how to begin. I was like, let me do all the work. I will just interview you and ask you about their life story, essentially, and food memories. And he said, okay, all right, and that's it. And then I ended up writing it, and my dad never actually saw any drafts or even knew what dishes were going to go in there.
Okay.
I did all that.
You did all the work.
I gave him the book when it was all printed and done.
And this might be the dumbest question, but I sometimes have this belief with the Chinese restaurant that maybe not every recipe is even written down.
They're not. Actually, none of our recipes are written down.
So how did you then have to construct it? I guess you knew the recipes in your head.
Oh, okay. So actually, I had to reverse engineer almost everything, especially the dishes that my dad was talking about from his youth.
Sure. Which
I didn't get to experience. Or there would be ones that, that came from his mom that I was lucky enough to experience, but those memories were 30 years from over 30 years ago. So it was just based on his description of flavor profiles, ingredients, and then me making it at home, and then giving it to my dad and say, how does it taste? Does it taste like it? Do you think it needs more sugar, more of this? And so it was a lot of that back and forth that I had to do. And then with restaurant recipes, it's the same thing. We do not write anything down. Even to this day, we do not write recipes down. That's just, I guess, the way that Asian immigrants work. If you ask any family member, how do you make this dish? It's like a finger of ginger and a pinch of this. They use these hand gestures, and I'm just like, what does this mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, I just had to go off of memory of taste.
Yeah, that's a lot of work. So how long from start to finish was this project?
So the recipe writing itself took 1 year.
Okay.
I separated it out. I worked on the story first. That was about a year. Recipe writing was a year. I devoted every Monday off to write the recipes and work on 10 recipes per week, which all happened on one day.
Sure. Amazing. Well, we'll eat soon, so we'll save some of the stories about the food for that section. But if you hadn't become a chef, you talked about finance, but was there ever a moment in your life that you thought, yeah, I'm not going to go into the family business? And to your point, a lot of restaurants ultimately do go out of business because the kids don't want to continue the legacy. They've come here to in the Bay Area, of course, to go live the tech dream or other dreams, right?
I would always be doing something with food. I know that I had gone another direction, but I was doing that not because I was following my heart. I was just following what every Asian kid is told to follow.
Sure.
But if I wasn't a chef, I'm pretty sure I would probably do something in hospitality, probably hotels, anything to deal with people and food and gathering, because that's one part of this business that I truly love. Yeah. So it's not just cooking that I love. I love the social aspect and the idea of giving people a memorable experience, and I love travel. Yeah. And so travel is another thing that I think when people come, they're happy.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah. It's a very different experience than probably what a lot of Asian kids get to, right? You were in the restaurant starting at 7. You saw how your dad and mom interacted with customers and ultimately did it yourself. So, yeah, it suits yourself well to a hospitality career, but I'm glad you stayed with cooking.
Yes.
So, with that, I'm hungry, so let's take a pause.
Yes, let's eat.
Yeah. Thank Before I ask you about the food, what do you speak? Do you speak Mandarin, Cantonese, Shanghainese?
Yes,
All the
it's
above.
all three.
Yeah.
Very nice.
And was that something that you grew up even before getting into the restaurant business yourself, that you just kind of grew up speaking those languages, or did you um, feel like you had to learn them in order to then run your restaurant and be able to interact with customers?
I grew up speaking Chinese first, so I grew up speaking Cantonese and Shanghainese first. And Mandarin came later when my grandparents would have soap operas on.
Okay.
That's how I started learning Mandarin. But English was not my first language. And that was not on purpose. It was just because everyone who was around me was speaking their own native language. So that's how I.
So it wasn't really until you went to elementary school that you started to learn English?
Yeah. Well, I started, actually, my parents would joke when I went to daycare, I couldn't communicate with the people there. And so that's kind of, as soon as I started some form of like childcare outside of the home, that's when the English language came into play.
Okay. Well, now we've got the food in front of us. I don't have to guess at what this food is. In fact, that's the cover of your book.
Looks familiar.
But obviously the famous Sesame chicken. Why don't you tell us about what we're about to try?
Yes.
And the order that we should try it in.
Okay. So typically in Chinese cuisine, you can either have the soup first or you have it last. You don't have it during the meal. This right here is our white river soup. This dish is inspired by my grandmother, so my mom's mom. She made a very traditional Cantonese fish soup using radishes and peanuts. And at the time, it was meant to nourish our whole family. So all the grandkids, she would make a big pot. The grandkids would come over, and then my parents would come over after dinner shift, and it would always be some form of soup. And this soup was the most popular one because fish is good for kids. They say it makes you smarter. And also my grandmother believed that it was just a very good soup for people who've been working all day.
Sure.
So that was the basis, which you're going to learn how to make the traditional version. Then this is the modified version that I created along with my dad that has a little Shanghainese influence. So right here, this is shizai. This is very common in Chinese cuisine. We put that into the broth. We omitted the radish because some people were kind of, radish has a.
And sorry, I look at it, it's almost like a mustard green type of vegetable.
Pickled mustard green. Yeah. Okay. And then we have a fish that's been braised to create this broth. There's rice noodle and wontons. So now you have kind of this combination soup. We call it kind of like this wonton soup. So any new person who comes here wants to try wonton soup, will direct
than
this way.
this. Very different than like your
Typical.
typical, yeah.
Mhm.
Now, you mentioned the way your grandma made. I assume that could be a meal in itself because you've got everything in here. You wouldn't even necessarily have to have a little beyond that.
So the version my grandmother made was purely just for the soup. You wouldn't eat the fish. You would
Oh, I
toss
see.
out the fish, and then you would eat the radish and
I
the
see.
peanuts.
I see.
We omitted all of that. We don't do any peanuts here for peanut allergy. Radish has a particular aroma to it that when we first introduced it, some people were kind of like, what is that? So I changed it up with these different ingredients, put more into it so it felt like a more substantial soup versus just the broth
That's cool.
itself.
And I can see, and like, I don't know if you see this, but you have like the whole fish in here. It's not just, already pre-cut fillets and
Yeah.
everything.
So this is a yellow croaker. Yellow croaker is very typical in Chinese cuisine. So we made the fish broth separately. Then we included the yellow croaker in there to add the Shanghainese element. You can also opt to say, I don't want the whole fish and just the fillet. So we'll also do that where it's like very consumer friendly, no bones.
Yeah, I was gonna say, why would people want that? I guess no bones, maybe no skin, something about like fish skin, I guess.
Yep.
But I'm happy with it all. All right, I'm gonna dig in.
So that's the first one.
Yeah, I'm very curious about, you've seen it all and your upbringing, etiquette wise. Like, this is what I do. I take the bowl, I just eat it just like this. But what do you think is like the proper etiquette for eating out of the little rice bowl or soup bowl?
Well, I feel like for our family, we're very like, it's not anxious is not a word, but everyone's always on the rush. So we actually didn't really have proper etiquette. It was just, as soon as the food hits the table, everybody needs to be seated and you better eat right away. That's the proper
Typical big Chinese family.
Yeah, if you wait and anything gets cold, then your elders are going to be really upset. That's the etiquette.
Yeah.
But some people find it interesting that when Chinese people eat, it's their chopsticks actually goes into a lot of the food. Yeah, like, go to the restaurant, you have the spoon, but that's not really the case at home. At home, we're all family. There's a lot of that happening.
Sure.
So don't worry too much about etiquette. As long as you're not sticking your rice straight into the or the chopstick straight into the rice.
Into the rice.
Yeah, then you're good.
There, right? That's the one really
That's the
big
one.
no, right? Yeah.
Big no-no. Yeah.
It's so good.
We got to one hand.
Now, I'm already having flashbacks to my childhood, like such great, well, when I say childhood, eating at the house of Nanking, because I think what I remember beyond just the good tasting food is the colors and the richness of flavors. I'd love to just hear your take on color in food.
With color, this is something that my dad actually would always talk to me about. If you go to House of Nanking, you'll think, well, nothing's like presented in a very refined way. It's always large plates of food. Sometimes the plate is thrown at you, right? And it's not like sometimes it's kind of messy. But there was one thing that my dad really cared about. It was color of your food. You don't want things to look unappetizing. So, if we're serving eggplant, we want to make sure you do still see the purple in it, right?
Okay.
And you contrast it with some green onions.
Yeah.
With the sesame chicken, like kind of that bright color with the sweet potato, everything needs to look like something you want to eat. It doesn't have to be plated beautifully where you've got intricate designs.
Yeah.
And in fact, he doesn't like that. He says, if you're doing all that stuff, the food's going to get cold.
Yeah.
Right? He focuses on, as soon as it hits the table, the texture needs to be right, the color needs to be right, and then people need to eat it.
Okay.
Right away.
The colors, just the overall presentation, to your point, it's meant to be almost more home style and comforting, but it's still very beautiful. And I noticed in the cookbook, but the photos are great, right? Like, it almost, sometimes you look at it and it's like, oh, I wonder if that's staged. I wonder if that's real food.
Yes.
How do you ensure that the food looks authentic to how it's served at House of Nanking and Fang, but also still just pop off the page and flip the feeling.
Yeah, so I was very methodical about how we wanted to shoot the dishes. All the House of Nanking recipes I wanted to be shot at House of Nanking, at our tables, by the window, include some kind of element that makes you feel like you're eating that dish at the restaurant, because all the dishes that I picked are for our customers, the customers who have been to our place for decades and say, I'm not in SF anymore. I've like craved this one dish and I can't get it. I want them to see that image and be like, wow, transport them to the time they would be sitting there and eating it. The other thing that I did with the family recipes was I wanted it to be here on our second floor. We consider the second floor kind of like as our living room. It has more of like a family kind of dining feel. We used all our own cabinets, all the vases that you see back there, all the porcelain and ceramics are things that we've collected over time. So we wanted it to have that kind of homey, Chinese homey element. And as far as just putting them like on the table, House of Nanking, I wanted it to feel lived in. So some of the dishes you'll see photography wise is it looks like someone's already dug into it, right? There's a fork in it. It's part of the plate. Looks like some of the eggplants are already gone. Some of it has like rice already dug into. I really wanted it to feel lived in, just like how House of Nanking is. It's not perfect. And for the home recipes, I wanted it to feel nostalgic, like it was coming from another time, another place. And so we used a lot of plateware that is actually from the past. I dug through some of the stuff that my dad's collected over time, that my grandparents will have, and we made sure those dishes that they made landed on plates like that.
I see. And then what about plating for the restaurants on their own outside of what was used for the table? How intentional are you in terms of choosing plates that also make the food, stand out in certain way?
That is actually a lot of my dad. My dad really loves to think about, okay, well, when all the food comes to the table, not only color, I want different shapes, right? Some round, some oval, different rims, different colors. It's just so that you're creating like a table of treasures for people and make it interesting. Not the same.
Like everything's a little bit different. I love that we're having this conversation because sometimes there's, a stereotype. Chinese restaurants, they can be dirty. They don't care about how food is presented, but everything seems very intentional. Even saying, when we were down in the kitchen, like you say, lived in, like it reminds me of, again, the old Chinese restaurants I went to where you're just running out of space, right? So there's dishes everywhere, there's equipment everywhere, there's supplies everywhere. And yet I'm hearing from you how intentional that all is to create a certain aesthetic that, I'm not here to create a Michelin star, looking white tablecloth restaurant, even though you do have white tablecloth, but it's more about making people feel comfortable.
Yeah, I remember there was a phase when I told my dad, when I just got into the business, Dad, like, why don't we redo House of Nanking and make it modern, right? We've had this place for so long, it's kind of falling apart, and we have the money to fix it up. It's not like we're back in the day. And he goes, "No, I don't want to fix it up. If we fix it up, then people won't see the age that's in the restaurant. It won't feel like this making." And he said, "Yeah, it should be. Oh, it's been around for 30 years. Like it shouldn't look brand new. If it did," he said, "it'd be confusing for me. Sure, it would feel more stale." And I remember listening to that and thinking, "Oh, like I didn't think of it that way." And I think it's actually very intelligent. One, he's saving money, but two, that is true. Like people actually like coming into House of Nanking and getting that kind of old time feel. Things aren't just like perfect, and it's loud. There's so much going on. It shouldn't be perfect. And we kind of executed the same vision here. Is like you walk in, it does feel like, oh, a Chinese restaurant of a family, and they've been here for 18 years.
And you talked about travel earlier. You go to Hong Kong, and when you go to the really good restaurants, They are like that.
They're all like
They're
that.
not all about like lots of open space and cleanliness. Even though I trust that the food area is still clean, it just feels more comfortable, I think, for people that are coming to the restaurant, whether they're coming from within the Bay Area or coming from overseas, which some of them do customers do come from.
I feel like those are places my dad will always say you can go time and time again.
Yeah.
Of course, we also appreciate the really refined and beautiful places, but those aren't places that we would go all the time. It's also not the most accessible places, right? It has to be a celebration, usually deep pockets too,
Sure.
right? Like
Yeah.
you're paying for all of that, right? Here, it's like anybody can come and enjoy an incredible meal, no matter what bracket time.
Yeah.
Okay. So, sesame chicken, obviously our best-selling dish at House of Nanking. That had to be the cover. We said the most iconic dish of this restaurant. And
Why did it become that? Like, do you think just word of mouth, everyone loves it, or was it, in those moments where customers don't order and your dad puts a plate in front of them? Was it often sesame chicken?
I think it was the ingenuity of taking something that my dad understood that everybody loved. Everybody loved at that time, late 80s, orange chicken, right? People still have kind of these, just even like,
Kind of
Panda Express. Right?
Yeah.
Everybody has kind of what, how can you not like it?
Sure.
Crispy, sweet.
Yes.
And so he said, okay, we have to, as a Chinese restaurant, have something like that. But of course, how can I do it differently? And so our version isn't really heavily battered. In fact, it's not really battered at all. There is no coating.
Yep.
It's just cornstarch, but it has a little bit of a crispiness to it, so it feels lighter. And then he paired it with glazed sweet potatoes, something that he felt was a beautiful combination of Western things that people like. So Thanksgiving, turkey, and sweet potato. And he thought chicken and sweet potato, kind of a delightful combination. And the sauce, he toned down the sweetness of it. He didn't use the red food coloring, didn't use the orange aspect, the kind of artificial flavor. He just went with a typical Shanghainese kind of like sugar, soy sauce, a little bit of spice. And people loved it. I grew up watching like so many people eating this dish that I'm like an expert. I'm just like the perfect combination.
Yeah.
So the way that people would do it is they would usually put a little rice on their plate.
Sure.
And then they would spoon the chicken and the sweet potatoes, get the sauce on the rice, right? Oh, thank you.
Because our podcast is called United by Rice.
Yes, we have to.
Yeah, of course. But also, I get asked this question sometimes, and you don't have to obviously answer it from the restaurant experience, but from their home experience. One question that people ask is, do you wash your rice before you cook it in the rice cooker?
Oh, yes, we do. Oh, that's
At the restaurant, I know you do, but at home?
At home, we also wash it.
Okay.
So that's funny that people ask that.
Yeah, I think there's a movement of folks that say, you don't need to wash the rice because it's slightly pre-washed and it takes away from some of the goodness.
Okay, so I think there's no right or wrong with this question. The reason why we wash it is not necessarily because the rice is dirty and like you get sick from it, but we wash it to actually remove the starch and the sugars. For Chinese cuisine, when it's using jasmine rice, we actually don't want that sticky coolness aspect to it. So if we don't rinse it well, then the rice tends to clump together more. If we want to make good fried rice, we actually want the rice to be like more individual grains. Yeah. So that's why we end up doing it both at home and at the restaurant.
Right.
But, that's all a preference, right?
Yeah.
Some people say, well, I don't like it.
Yeah.
Kind of
or they like the sticky.
Yeah, I want the stickiness. So.
Well, that's actually, I'm glad you gave that answer because it will make people who don't wash their rice feel justified. Yeah. I want to start sweet potato.
Sweet potato, yeah. So the way that everybody would do it, because I watched them do it, they put the chicken neatly. People were so like, it's interesting, very methodical. They put it onto the rice and they would get some rice, they get the chicken and a sweet potato all in one bite.
Okay, I gotta restart. I'm such a sauce guy too. So it's like maybe we should get some sauce. So it's the fork. So like maybe all of that. It's good. But you can just see the color and the sweet tail, they almost match.
Yeah. So people may not know that chefs actually love watching people eat, or at least I think good chefs, like, because that's how you know whether a dish is doing well or not. I don't think you can actually know by asking people directly, because not everyone will tell you, right?
But it's interesting because I would have thought people watch, it's like, oh, they like it. Like that's the main reason. You're studying how they distribute the food over the rice and how they're combining things together.
I had a lot of time as a kid. A lot. You can tell I love food. That I would almost dissect. Oh, that's interesting. So the next dish here, this one is actually a family recipe. This is more home cooking style. And this right here is what we call flowering cauliflower, and a little different from typical cauliflower. Okay. You'll see that the florets are actually more spread apart like that.
Yeah, like less dense.
Less dense. And then this is Chinese bacon. So Chinese bacon is actually quite hard. We're using it as a seasoning agent.
Okay.
So you could eat it or you don't have to.
No.
We're using that to season and bring kind of this pork flavor to the cauliflower. And when my dad started seeing this at this market, he was so thrilled because that is actually the type of cauliflower that they were used to having, not the ones that are super tight. In fact, the ones that are super tight here, they'll say it tastes kind of bland, kind of watery. This is a little
It's the same plant.
Same plant.
So you just have to find it, maybe whatever additives they add when they're growing it to find a less dense.
There's still two varietals.
Okay.
It's two varietals. So when you taste it, you'll probably think it may remind you of kind of like a cauliflower / broccolini.
Oh yeah, right away.
Right?
Yeah.
It has this firmer texture to it, a little bit more crunchy, less watery, and the sauces and flavors absorb better into the florets.
Right. I want to say it even has a different, I think you were saying this has a slightly different texture than normal cauliflower.
But you taste a little of that bacon, Chinese bacon flavor. So
I would eat this too.
But I wanted to include a lot of these traditional family dishes because at the end of the day, I want people to be able to cook from the book.
Sure.
And of course, a lot of the House of Nanking recipes, restaurant recipes have been adapted for the home kitchen. But I also want people to feel like, oh, well, what if I just want to make something like a Chinese family, right? And saying, I just want to make something nourishing for my family that I kind of grew up with.
Sure.
So these flavors are going to hit that demographic. And then this is going to be more of like, oh, I want to do something different, like kind of restaurant style.
Now, you called it bacon. It's a little bit like a laptop to me. Eat growing up, maybe a little bit firmer. If I wanted to buy cauliflower like this, where do I have to go to buy it?
Chinatown. The best resource.
Yeah.
Support the little Chinatown markets. They have the best produce when it comes to finding Chinese ingredients and vegetables and fruits. I feel like they do everything by seasonality. And so you may go maybe a couple months later and they won't have it.
I see.
Right. Anytime you go and pick out vegetables, this is like during the
seasonal. Yep.
Yeah.
And what's your routine at the restaurant where you have folks daily going to these markets to buy these ingredients, and then once the season changes, you're going to reinventing your menu a little bit?
Generally, actually, it's just my dad or myself. My dad is in Chinatown every day. He's always looking. I tend to go once a week to the markets to pick up stuff for my family. and I look for things for events and stuff. Do I want to do something different this week? So it's all inspired by just being in Chinatown and markets to bring things to people. And then this one, a garlic eggplant, is
Also very well
something
done.
that everybody talks about, and it's also in the book. Has a very unique story that's attached to it, but a lot of people will say, "Oh, we actually will eggplant everywhere, but it just tastes different. Like the one that you have here, it's more like the texture of the eggplant is a little bit more buttery, and the skin still has a little bit of like a crisp to it, and the flavors. So this had to make it in the
Yeah, and I think to your point, people may associate or think of garlic, or sorry, eggplant. That's like a California Western vegetable versus like a Chinese traditional vegetable. You said it has this unique story.
Yeah. Okay. So the story, which is in the book too, was about how
The flavor is amazing.
wasn't good. And then it's like it's not mushy. It's soft, but kind of buttery. Still has like texture to it. So, the eggplant. My dad cooking that eggplant and the smell is actually what drew these two customers to come into the restaurant one day. And it turns out that the two customers,
So they can
one
smell
of
it from the street.
yes, and she instantly said, "Wow, this makes me feel like home." And she lived in Shanghai. She was actually the daughter of the most famous female actress in China, Zhang Shaocheng. So this is way back in the day.
Yep.
Okay. And the other person who was with her, a friend, was Peter Kaufman. Peter Kaufman's father, Phil Kaufman, famous movie director, film producer. They had an incredible meal there just because she smelled the flavor that was coming from the eggplant. And my dad made eggplant for her and a bunch of other dishes. And at the time, the wok was in the front of the window. So that scent
see
just
it,
immediately
come
comes
out.
out. Because of that meal,
Yeah.
they brought Phil Kaufman back with Patricia Unterman, who is a famous food critic and food writer. She had an incredible meal and wrote about it and gave it a 3-star review. The same day they gave a 3-star review to French Laundry. So we were next to each other. We still have that hanging on
Framed
the wall.
downstairs.
Yes.
Gotta be.
And right after that, things really just like took off. People were kind of coming in word of mouth and it was good, but that kind of blew everything out of the waters because then
What year was this? Right?
I have to look back on it. You can't remember the exact year, but back then it was restaurants were discovered through the newspaper, the Sunday Times. If a food critic wrote about it, then people say, "Oh, that's where I would go." It's not what we do now, and that just next day long line before they even open, and my parents were like, "Wow, this is crazy," and then it just continued on.
Sometimes when we see this moment happen on a TV show, the food critic is like a surprise. People don't know they're there. In this moment, they knew that the food critic was coming. So you go was a surprise.
My dad didn't know.
Okay. So he was getting the real show. He wasn't getting like or they weren't getting a prepared meal only for them.
No, so after that meal happened with John Felton, she came in because of the eggplant. They had an incredible meal. They went and told the dad. The dad came. My dad doesn't know who Phil Kaufman is, doesn't know who Patricia Unterman is. And they sat down, had a meal. My dad even after that, right? Famous food critic, nothing. But my dad did say that he felt the lady was very well-versed and educated in food, even Chinese food, yeah. Then the article came out and was like, "Oh, okay, Now they're great friends with Will Kaufman. Actually, Peter was here at the one of our book things.
Okay.
And so, yeah.
Amazing. So, secret for you, because I didn't tell you ahead of time. I actually really don't like eggplant roll,
Okay.
but I wanted to try it because I knew it was famous. And as I was trying it, the way you described it exactly, like buttery,
Yeah.
not mushy, because mushy is actually the reason, like, that's my one thing in my palate that I don't like
Don't
to
like-
eat.
yeah.
But I actually love that thing. Could I eat both of it? And it was buttery, but then like that delivery vehicle for the garlic.
Yes.
I feel so bad for people that don't like garlic but can't eat garlic.
Yes, no.
It is so good. So, well, wonderful. Now we talked about in the cookbook a little bit when we were taking a break, how accessible the recipes are. You know, so for someone like me who doesn't cook too much or cooks very basic things, how would you rate the difficulty level of, you know, let's say you use French laundry? Like I would never even touch it with French laundry because that feels like, forget it. I'm not even going to do that. I watched the dare. It looks terrible. For an average person like me, what do you think? Is this something that I could pick up and cook from?
Absolutely. I would rank difficulty level from this book probably for someone who doesn't really cook, probably a 3 and a 4.
Okay.
10 being very difficult.
Yeah.
0 being like so easy you could do in your sleep. I think that what people have to understand is that all the dishes, whether it's House of Nanking dishes or family dishes, most of them, 90% of the dishes were all made through very frugal means, very limited time, very busy people.
Yeah.
No fancy kitchen or gadgets, limited equipment and resources. So even from the ingredient standpoint, can't afford to buy all kinds of ingredients or spices or sauces. So it was about how do I make something tasty and delicious and easy in a short period of time? And that is what I wanted to present through the book. So hopefully that would give people sort of, oh, okay, well, that should be easy. And then the other thing that I did was I actually made all the recipes purposefully in my own home kitchen, which is quite small.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to give myself leeway to say, well, then I'll use this or that. I just had to use what I had.
Okay.
And would give me the greatest joy is if people can finally say, wow, I didn't realize this dish is so easy. There's some dishes that have only 2 ingredients and some couple pantry basics, right? Like as long as you have salt, sugar, soy sauce,
Cornstarch, maybe.
Yeah, cornstarch, some of the core ingredients, then you can make so many of those dishes. And a lot of it, we made it foolproof.
Sure. And like a wok, you know, just basic wok cooking is probably the primary way of cooking.
Not really. So I put wok dishes in there, but I would say most of them you can actually do with just a standard pan.
Okay.
Yeah. My grandmother didn't even have a gas stove. She had an electric stove. So we had to do a lot with just standard pans and no woks.
Amazing.
But if you want to get fancy, you can use.
Sure.
Yes.
Now, so the cookbook, you've talked about it or touched upon it a few times. The recipes, it sounds like some of them are in the restaurant and some are just comes from the family and more home cooking. Like what percent overlap if I were to look at the House of Nanking menu and say, oh, these are my 8 favorite dishes. What are the chances I'm going to find, you know, maybe the easier to cook version of you?
Well, we broke it down where House of Nanking recipes about 50 to 60%.
Okay.
And the rest are family recipes. The House of Nanking recipe, as far as ease, I would say, yeah, still in that 4 range.
Yeah.
You're not going to find all the favorites because House of Nanking has been around for 38 years. So it's hard to put all the dishes in there.
Sure.
But we tried our best to include a couple heavy hitters that we still have on the menu. And we really wanted to actually include some of the dishes that people talk about, even to this day, that are not on our menu.
Okay. Now, United by Race, you may know this already, but we always ask you a question when we end our interviews. And this should be a pressure packed question for you because you're a chef. But our question is, what is your go-to dish? You know, let's say after a long day, you're tired, you just want something very, what is the one thing that you always do?
So it's actually in the book. People are gonna be very surprised because it's a very simple dish.
It's always, the answer is always a simple dish, by the way.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's actually the steamed pork patty with eggs.
Okay.
I consider this what we call 家常菜. So
Uh-huh.
it's called home cooking, like
Yeah.
home food. It's not something you would find necessarily in a restaurant, but I feel every family, no matter what region of China, they
Yeah.
have their own version of this.
So it isn't the dish that you sometimes cook in like a flan dish, and you can use hamdan or you can use
Yes.
just egg, and it's like ground pork with egg.
Mhm.
Oh yeah, that was also
Yes.
one of my favorites growing up.
Yeah.
But it's hard to find in a restaurant.
Yes, because it's a very homey dish.
Yeah.
And I feel every family kind of has their own version too.
Yeah.
And every family, I feel like from different parts of China, whether it's north or south, they all have their own kind
Something
of
different.
like steamed pork patty with eggs. You can season it differently,
Yeah.
different like textures too. And it reminds me a little bit of like what American people would think of like as meatloaf, right?
Sure,
Meatloaf
yeah.
for a period of time was also kind of that like homey dish, except I think the steamed version that we have is way more delicious.
And you,
Spin it over the rice.
yeah, and I actually like mix it in with the rest. I like
Yes.
it kind of mixed together.
And that's kind of the beauty too, is I feel so many people that I talk to will say, oh, I grew up eating that.
Yeah.
My family would always make it. Everyone had their own way of eating it. Spinning over the rice, mixing it, or
Yeah.
eating it separate.
So it's in the cookbook.
It's in the
And
ultimate comfort.
can you still get it back to the restaurant?
No, we don't make
Okay.
it.
So see, now you're forcing me. You're going to make me have to cook.
I promise you this one's going to be easy. And
All
it
right,
should
I'm going
be
to try it.
fun.
I'm going to try it and take pictures of it. I'm going to send it to you.
Yes.
Anyway, it's been a pleasure talking to you about it. But really,
Thank
congratulations.
you, Ben. Thank you,
Thank you for
coming.
feeding me.
Oh my
This is
God.
Such a
My
great
pleasure.
experience, and I can't wait to end that.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to be able to talk about that.
No, of course.
Yeah.
No, of course. Again, it's like important, I think, we've talked so much about how much this feels like home for us. And yet, a lot of times, to your point, like not getting the food show yet, because people are telling, and Chinese training, people don't eat Chinese food. I agree with you. That's kind of below me. I think there's a market for it. So maybe I have one more clothing question. You had the show in 22. Do you want to kind of continue and down that path? Like, what's next for you?
I mean, right now the focus has really been on the book as far as where would I like to go or take it from here. I think eventually I would still want to do something in line with either some form of cooking show or something that's actually related to sharing more about our food and our culture coming from our perspective.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of food travel shows that are excellent out there and they cover a lot of other cuisines and countries, but to this day, there's still not one that represents China.
Yeah.
And China is the largest, most in-depth cuisine in the world, and yet there's no representation happening on that level on a U.S. network.
I would like middle America to know that Chinese food gets better than Canada Express. So we're going to make that our initiative. So
Yes.
well, thank you, Sonny.
Thank you.
Now I'm like choked up because I also want to eat. So
Yes.
turn off the camera. We can eat.